our community is pretty fatphobic. People don't want to admit it because the way that like we make fun of liberals that are like, I'm not racist. I can't be racist. I'm liberal. It's a similar thing of like, what do you mean? I can't be prejudiced. I can't be fatphobic. I'm queer. I'm perfect. I have all these moral highs. And it's like, that's actually not super helpful because if we can't admit that we have the problem, how are we ever going to look at it, face it, and deal with it?
Hey y'all, welcome back to Made It Out. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Today's episode is the last episode of season 1. Matilda and I are going to take a 2-week break to spend the holiday with our families, and we will be back to you January 14th. But in the meantime, please check out our Supercast, our subscription community. We have brand new shows on there to tide you over until the new year. And also, it's a perfect gift for all of your gay friends. And today's episode is one that I hope will help you moving into the holiday season. I'm here with Liza Katsman, who is an intuitive eating coach. And we're going to talk about our relationship to food, diet culture in the queer community, and some tips on cultivating a better relationship with our bodies. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
I loved our last conversation. For context, Liza came over. We had like a 2.5-hour conversation in the kitchen.
Impromptu,
just talking about eating and some of the struggles we both had. So I really think it's perfect timing to kind of bring it to our audience and share some of the knowledge you have.
Totally.
You are an intuitive eating coach. Can you explain what exactly that is and what led you to that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So intuitive eating essentially is an unconditional permission to eat without the consideration of weight loss or, some kind of negative external influence. So for me, it's like really just permission to eat, but not just eat, permission to move, permission to not move if you're not feeling well. Yeah, just an unconditional access to your own well-being through food, movement, perception of self, rejection of diet mentality and diet culture, which is probably one of the most pervasive things in our culture. So that's really how I look at it. There are certainly like official definitions of it by Evelyn and Elyse, who kind of wrote the book on it. But that's how I like to describe it to kind of make it, I guess, friendly to people.
Do you mind sharing what led you to do this work?
My journey started very, very early. So I immigrated to this country when I was just under 4 from Russia. And we had food on the table, but it certainly wasn't what my friends had. It wasn't like McDonald's and things like that were like special occasions. So there was a level of food scarcity. I would say when I was about 9 or 10 was when it became more around body size. I was bigger than almost all my classmates, including like height. Like I grew very, very tall very, very quickly. I think in my like school pictures, I was like, they did it by height and I was definitely right at the top. And I was also just, I was like bigger bone, but like literally like just wider shoulders, wider set body. I just knew that my friends' clothing didn't fit me when we like tried to, but I wasn't, I look back now and I certainly was not what I think society would consider like a fat kid, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just so interesting that it was a problem, even though I wasn't really like a fat kid. But I did start pretty rapidly gaining weight around puberty, like 12. And that was when the kind of real big pressure to like not do that. So I was put into Weight Watchers in middle school, got a personal trainer. I don't remember how long I did that. Honestly, that time in my life is so murky because it was so bad. Like middle school, I remember coming home from school crying all the time. Like, I also think I like acted out. I'm sure I bullied kids. I know I did because I was like bullied and felt so insecure that I like took it out on other people. If anyone is watching that I bullied, I'm sorry. And yeah, and that just like progressed on and on and on. I remember like my mom was like just trying to be helpful, but she like read these like Russian magazines, and Russia is like a very fatphobic culture, like very much so. And they would have these like insane diets. I mean, like insane. One of the diets I went on was 2 days you ate nothing but 2 pounds of fruit a day. And then the next 2 days you ate nothing but drinking, I think, 2 liters of milk, whole milk a day. And then you just switch off. I'm not joking. I mean, like, and I did that. And then I think I had a weekend, I had like a mental breakdown, and my mom was like, you should probably stop that one, because I was in malnutrition.
Right.
Right. Like I was
Starving.
Yeah. Yeah. In full, I mean, like that's like full starvation, but it didn't stop me from trying to pursue weight loss. So I actually tested out of high school in 10th grade. So I started college at 16. And I had a car. I was very independent. I was by myself a lot. My parents would be at work, and it's college. So like I'd just drive to classes when I needed to drive to classes, and then I'd be home a lot of the time. And that was what allowed my bulimia to start, because I was alone. I was isolated. Could like experiment with stuff like that. And at the time I didn't call it that. I was just like, well, I just have this little thing I do.
Yeah.
And that then like followed me. I mean, it wasn't always really aggressively bad, but it followed me throughout my life. Like it would just pop up here and there when things were hard, or when things felt out of control, or when I was just like having a really hard time. Like I would be on a diet and fail at the diet. That's what I would resort to. So like it wasn't always there, but it was like my like little back pocket sidekick kind of. You know, that just continued through the rest of college. I did all kinds of things to manage my weight. I took drugs, you know, like when it was like funsies, everybody was doing Adderall and cocaine and whatever. And I was like, oh, and I cannot eat on those things? Stellar, you know, even though I, at some points was so hungry, I could eat through Adderall and cocaine, which people thought was just wild. They were like, how is that possible? And, you know, now looking back, I was like, I was starving. Yes. And that was when my bulimia would kick up. So it was like this horrible cycle of restriction, starvation, drugs, eating anyway, and then sometimes purging because I ate anyway. And just like the cycle just continued. And I think there's like a perception that eating disorders are like reserved for like young, thin, straight white women, wealthy. Like there's like a picture of what eating disorders look like, but I was not, even at my thinnest, I was not thin. I was still probably considered overweight on the BMI scale or whatever, which is a crock of shit. But I was not thin. No one knew, you know, like people think that they know what eating disorders look like, and they don't. And it was so severe. Like when I actually tell people like what my behaviors were, they're shocked at how bad it was, and that they didn't know. My roommate didn't know, and I lived with her for 6 years. And that was the point where I was like, okay, if I don't stop, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, no, I don't want to die, but mainly because that's how people are going to find out that I have an eating disorder. Yeah. Is if I die from it.
Holy shit.
And then that's when I was like, okay, time to like really actually just kind of surrender and give up on all of this. And went into my like healing, which was a very rocky time. So that was like almost like 6 years ago. And just like it really allowed, my healing allowed me to have my life back, like make decisions for myself, because I had more mental space to like not think about food and my body and all these things all the time. I mean, listen, I had tons of therapy, tons of support and all these things. But one, it was a little bit of mental space. Now I have way more. And also finally exhaling and like telling people, which was really hard. Eventually I had to tell my mom as part of my recovery. And that was just such a huge relief. She was obviously mortified, but also was like, I'm not surprised considering what you grew up in. I do like kind of equity and inclusion coaching and consulting as my work. When I went into my like coaching certification program, something felt like I need to be doing more than what I'm doing. And a bunch of signs came from the world that I can help people. I can make a difference in this. I had already kind of been talking about this a lot and kind of trying to help my friends that struggled with this a little bit, and always just be like, hey, reminder of this, whatever. And I was like, maybe I should do this in a way that's official. So then I got my certification to become an intuitive eating counselor, like taught by, one of the women that wrote that book. And it's been really magical. I mean, even in my training and all of that, I'm even constantly learning like new things and frameworks and perspectives to change that are helping me along my journey, constantly, obviously helping me to help other people. Yeah, I mean, I love it. And it's also hard and sometimes very, very sad what I hear from folks, but also know that I have the possibility of like helping them out.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have anybody. I did it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not talked about enough, I don't think. And also I think what you said about eating disorders look a certain way, even myself, when I was going through a lot of eating struggles, I never put the word eating disorder to what I was going through. I was having a really hard time with binge eating. And even in my mind, it was like, I can't have an eating disorder. I'm not skinny. I'm not like tiny and thin. Like, and if I do it, something's not working, you know? So it was very like hard for me to kind of get to a point. And it wasn't until I had someone say to me, like, you might have an eating disorder, you know, that I even came to that conclusion. So I think sometimes it's hard for people to even classify themselves as that, to then be able to get the help.
Absolutely. And I think when you think about like anorexia, bulimia, people think of a certain type of person, look, whatever. When people think of binge eating disorder, they think of somebody that is in maybe a very large body size too, right? We have these ideas of what those things mean. And a lot of people don't even think that binge eating disorder is real. They think it's just like people that have no self-control, which is just, it's in the DSM, right? Like it's in the, for those that don't know what that is, right? Like it's a diagnosable disease. And I think that folks that are in larger bodies that still have anorexia, it's called, I believe, atypical anorexia, or like anorexia with atypical symptoms. So even in the medical world, there is ideas of what eating disorders have to look like and why so many people are undiagnosed and it's underdiagnosed. So they are also just as susceptible to outside perceptions of what those things look like.
Right. I mean, I think it's like this diet culture that's so pervasive and it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
I am curious though, for queer people, where does this intersect and how common is it in our community?
So I'll kind of split it out a little bit because I think the trans experience is very unique to like, say, the queer women. And even in queer women, right, there are gender non-conforming queer women and gender conforming queer women. And they all have different realities. It is because it is so much more complex for trans people that it's not just about desirability or diet culture. Those things affect everyone, undoubtedly, but it's also a matter of safety. It's a matter of feeling that, not looking too masculine or too feminine, right? So a trans woman may want to lose a lot of weight to be very thin to fit into women's clothing or look more feminine or look more like a woman. A trans man may not want to have curves, right? Because that's very gender dysphoric. And so, when considering working with the trans community, I think that aspect of understanding the intersection between, gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia and restrictive eating and all of those things is so important to consider. And I think there's a lot of providers which say, well, you can't do this. That's bad for you. That's an eating disorder. You have to undo that. And don't consider that, maybe that is the only way that person is staying alive, right? That they feel more embodied until they can get gender confirmation surgery, or the amount of doctors that will not even perform gender confirmation surgery until you lose a certain amount of weight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so they seek weight loss to be able to get what is, what I know is life-saving care, life-saving surgery. Mm-hmm. I would say that is the community in which it is, I don't want to say most complex because you can't really quantify these things, but very, very nuanced and has to be taken great care with. And then when we think about, let's say, like queer women and the lesbian community, we typically think of androgynous as women or non-binary people that are AFAB, that are in the kind of middle of the, or whatever, outside of the male-female gender spectrum. But for curiosity's sake, I did a Google search of androgynous women, and there was not a single fat person on that.
Oh, wow.
On that result.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Because androgyny, if we think about like just who have been famous androgynous people, what does that look like? We always think of like these like really cool, wafy androgynous models and actors. And I don't know that I've ever heard, even just in the community, a fat person or just even a not thin person described as androgynous.
That is so interesting. But now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I have the same experience of like, I don't know, all the ones that I would name would be very thin, like Shane from the L Word and those types of people.
Right. Now, butch and larger, sure, but androgynous kind of has this specific look and feel, and it's usually thin.
Wow.
This idea of like boyish, not having hips, not having too large of breasts, kind of like a lean type of body, right? And some people really aspire to that. They want that. And that comes with thinness. Even my wife, who is very naturally thin, when she puts on certain clothes and she's like, oof, this makes me look very hippie, it's uncomfortable to her, right? She can hide it. She's quite slender. But if somebody has very, very wide hips, androgyny becomes, for them, perhaps they feel that it is out of reach.
Wow.
And so that has an element. There's also an idea that like for like masculine or butch lesbians, pressure to be muscular, right? Not just strong, but muscular. They're not immune to it. And again, all of the above. I'm taking out the general universe of diet culture that affects every single person.
These are just extra layers.
These are extra potential layers, right? And then for femme women, I think like for me, I've wanted to feel more feminine, more dainty, more like smaller, but I'm 5'8". I'm larger. I'm quite strong. I always have been. And for a long time, I was like, I feel so big. I feel so much bigger than my partner. I feel overwhelming. I feel too much. You know, as much as we want to say that we don't have gender norms in our community, we do. And so there is this pressure of the femme being smaller in some way. There is a level of like wanting to still feel protected or small. And that's, again, this is not everyone, but I hear of that a lot.
Totally.
Right.
This kind of ties into a conversation that we were having about how when you came into the community, you had mentioned that you felt less comfortable about your body than when you dated men.
Totally.
I had a different experience. I felt more comfortable because I feel like, I actually don't know why. I think this is something I'm still kind of parsing through, but I feel like I was always trying to meet this certain standard for men, I guess. I have talked about this before on the podcast, but I did a lot of surgery. I like really kind of engineered myself to look a certain way for men. And I felt less pressure when I came over to be with women. It felt like more accepting. Maybe that was just the relationships that I was in or the people that I was dating. But now that you're bringing this up, I did have all of this where it was like, I don't want to be like, I do feel wide or big or this or that. And I don't want to be the bigger one in the relationship because I am the femme one. And I typically date more masculine women. And even in my relationship now, like Matilda's very thin. She's just lean. She's long, you know, and I have a tendency to compare my body to hers.
Right.
So it's coming up that even though I felt more accepted overall, I still have that comparison a lot.
Yeah. And it's not just that I compare body size. It's I'm like, God, like, how can you eat half of that pasta and I'm still hungry and have to eat this whole one? Or, oh my gosh, like, it's so much easier. Why can you run a mile and I can't? And because we're the same. We're both women. We're the same height. We're like, there's nothing that much different from us. And that's why I think, and okay, so I should preface this. I didn't date men.
Okay.
I only slept with them out of desperation.
Okay.
You know, lack of availability and desperation. I mean, honestly, like insecurity, but it was like, I really don't mean this in a horrible way, but like cis straight men are just so simple.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, it's just like, I can get sex out of you. It's not hard. But I think with women, it's not that easy. And that's not all I wanted.
Right.
And also, I think it depends on the size of your body, how comfortable you feel in our community. My friends and I talk about this all the time, that like our community is pretty fat phobic. People don't want to admit it because the way that like we make fun of liberals, like that are like, I'm not racist. I can't be racist. I'm liberal. It's a similar thing of like, what do you mean? I can't be prejudiced. I can't be fat phobic. I'm queer. I'm perfect. I have all these moral highs. And it's like, that's actually not super helpful, because if we can't admit that we have the problem, how are we ever going to look at it, face it, and deal with it? I know that I have certain friends that have the experience of like swiping on apps as a fat woman and do not get matches, right? Or like, you know, I hear people all the time being like, yes, like, you know, I think fat women are beautiful, and yes, blah, blah, blah. And like, yes, like rah, rah to you, and, you know, whatever, fat positivity. I'm like, have you ever dated a fat person? The answer has never been yes, maybe once.
Right.
So it's like perception doesn't meet reality.
Yeah.
You know, the what we say we're celebrating and what we are actually doing is not congruent. It's the same thing with race. Now, are we more open to like different types of body types? Like maybe a boyish body type is not super, I don't know, desirable in the straight community. So we're like, yes, bring the boyish ones. A super buff woman may not be super desirable in the heterosexual community, but we're like, yeah, buff women, great, right? So yes, there's more acceptance for more variety.
Right.
But I think that there is some more acceptance. And, you know, I love when I see like fat go-go dancers. I'm like, yes, right? And I see a lot of people giving them money and giving them dollars, but I do wonder how many of those people would actually date that person, right? I don't know the answer.
Right.
I don't know the answer. The reason I say that is that I just want people to feel seen in that and that they're not making things up.
Right.
Right. I don't want people to feel gaslit when they say, hey, it feels like lesbians are still fatphobic. I don't want people to be like, that's not true. We're accepting of all body types. Like that's what I try and like be like,
Right.
Our society is fatphobic. So if we think our community is immune to that, we are kidding ourselves.
Right.
Just like we are kidding ourselves to think we're not racist, we're not, you know, classist, ageist, all those things. We are still living in our society, whether we like it or not, and we are still not immune to the horrors of all of the isms that, you know, just poison our waters.
Right. Something that I'm noticing in your language is the way you use the word fat. I think you say the word, and so many of us are afraid to approach that word and say it, or we have a very negative connotation to it.
Yeah, I mean, I really take direction from the like incredible fat, you know, Black fat liberation movement leaders that have made it, you know, try and make it very clear that fat is a descriptor, like tall, black, you know, I don't know, white, blonde, like it's a descriptor word, because that's what someone is like. But I use that as a general term. However, when I talk about an individual person, I don't know how that individual person wants to be regarded. And so that's when I sometimes change my language, because the general, you know, fat liberation movement uses the term fat, and they actually have categories of fat. So like small fat, mid fat, large fat, like they because different categories of fat experience very different levels of societal discrimination, health discrimination, right? So like somebody in a small fat body, which, you know, some would say I'm in, some would not say, I have a lot of privilege in comparison to someone that, you know, is getting like yelled at on an airplane or made fun of to their face at the gym, like things like that. I don't experience that.
Right.
But I still experience doctors telling me to lose weight arbitrarily.
Yes, that is something that I did not realize happens until recently. I listened to another podcast called Maintenance Phase. If you haven't heard of it, check it out. It's absolutely incredible.
Love her.
It's been helping me really deconstruct a lot of these kind of views and just toxicity that I have around body image.
Yeah.
And that is something that they brought up, was how fat people are discriminated against at the doctor's office. And a lot of ailments and illnesses, disease goes untreated because they're told to just lose weight.
Or diseases, like in my case, are created. So I went to the doctor. I was, you know, perfectly fine, and get weighed. By the way, PSA, everyone, you do not have to get weighed at the doctor, period. Not like you don't have to look at it, which a lot of people believe. You do not have to get weighed unless there is a very specific medical reason, like you're going under anesthesia. They have to know your weight.
Right.
Or you're getting dosed for a very specific medicine that is by weight. Otherwise, you don't have to get weighed, right? You know, I got weighed, and my doctor was, and did my blood work. My blood work was phenomenal, but my doctor was like, everything's great, but like you could really stand to lose some weight. And at the time I was unwell. And I was like, I just need to be prompted. Great. Yes. Woo. The doctor said I can continue this lunacy. So I went super, super deep into like no carb, not even like low carb, like really like almost no carb diet. Came back the next year, lost an X amount of weight. I don't use like pounds or numbers typically in my work, but I lost weight. But for the first time in my entire life, literally, my cholesterol was like through the roof, like almost at a dangerous level. And my doctor was like, oh, well, great job on I can see your numbers, your weight has gone down. Great job. Your cholesterol, like that has gone up. That's a little concerning, but I'm sure it'll regulate itself out.
Oh God.
Keep doing what you're doing. Like you could still use like an X amount to get into like the normal BMI range. Luckily, thank God, that was like 6 months before I kind of went into recovery. This year was the first year I got my blood work back where my cholesterol was back to normal. It took 5 years, 5.5 years to undo that. So like, what is healthy?
Yeah.
I was healthy. Like I'm saying physiologically, my blood work said I was healthy. And the pursuit of weight loss
Made you unhealthy.
Made me unhealthy. And that is nothing compared to people that there are absolutely many stories of people that go to get healthcare are told to lose weight when they have lung cancer, right? Oh, I'm having trouble breathing. Well, that's because you're fat, you're overweight. You just need to lose weight. And they spend months, years trying to get care until they're on their deathbed in stage 4 lung cancer. Right. So there's so much of that we do not provide the same care, the levels of care for fat people as we do for thin people. We systematically, absolutely treat them differently.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so pervasive that doctors self-report that they believe that fat people of a certain size are just kind of a waste of their time until they lose weight. I'm not saying all doctors, but like
enough of them.
Significant proportion of doctors feel that way. Enough so that there's like I think like an org that's like a medical students for like health at every size, which is like a movement in the medical world. I'm like, that organization would need to exist if medical students didn't feel that med school was like fat phobic, right? That our society was fat phobic. So there are things that are battling that, but the average person trying to seek care in this country and honestly around a lot of the world, that's not always helpful to them, right? Or the doctors in their area that are fat, neutral or whatever aren't covered by their health insurance, or there's just, it's incredibly, incredibly sad. And, I think that the self-advocating is something that's incredibly necessary. Something I always tell people when they go to the doctor and like they're refused anything is just to say, I want you to note that down in my chart, that you refused care for me or that you ignored this symptom. I want you to note that down on my chart. And when you ask them to note it down on their chart, it becomes like a legal liability. So then they're like, well, okay, fine, right? Fine. You can do the extra scan. You can do the thing. And like, it saves people's lives.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
I also feel like the misinformation is harmful to everyone. Because I think even in my world, I feel as though I have a long way to go, but I've healed a lot of the issues that I have with food. But I still find the issues with I still take issue with my body. And I can't say that I like love my body. And so I feel like I'm constantly working on it. But then it becomes this line of like, what is for health and what is for weight loss? And like, where is that line? And I know the intuitive eating that we've talked about, that scares me because it feels like, well, if I intuitive eat, I want a damn fried chicken sandwich every day. That's, pizza, it's, and where does that skew over into a not healthy in my brain? I don't know. I get lost in that shuffle and then it's taking up so much space. And then I'm right back into that binge eating spiral.
Totally. first of all, I just want to make it clear that like health and the pursuit of health is not an imperative. And our society actually makes it an imperative much more so for people that are fat or people in larger bodies than they do for thin people, right? It's like, you're not trying to be healthy by being fat. It's like, why isn't anybody yelling at a thin person that's like, drinking every weekend?
Right.
But in your case specifically, or people in cases like yours, I was similar, where I was like, are you kidding me? I'm allowed to eat whatever I want. That's wild, right? There's like two prongs to this. One is examining what the fear of the weight gain is, right? So people that are in treatment for eating disorders, right? One of their one of the things that keeps them from healing and recovering is the fear of weight gain. What is that about? Like doing some really honest, like introspection. Is it about health? If I knew for a fact that I would stay exactly the same health, maybe even improve my health, if my vitals were the same, if I felt like I had vitality and life to me and I was, able to do all the same activities and all the same things, would I still care about gaining weight? And if the answer is yes, then, right, doing a little bit of an extra layer of introspection, well, then what is that about? Then that's most of the time, right, the diet culture, the belief that thinner is better. And that the pursuit of thinness is worth all of the losses that you are very likely still experiencing. The loss of time, the loss of energy, the loss of money, the loss of creativity, the loss of, just name any resource. I make the joke, because I used to be in science and physiology, I used to make the joke, like, when I was in college, if I had not had my eating problems the way I did, I could have cured cancer. The amount of
brain space.
Yeah. Right. So what am I seeking thinness for, and what is it costing me? When we break it down to like those very basic principles, then we are able to do like a really thoughtful analysis. And the other piece that I also want to not poo-poo or leave behind, it's actually probably the most important, is in what ways has my pursuit of weight loss or pursuit of thinness, in what ways has it helped me? In what ways has it saved me? What benefit has it caused me? Is it acceptance in my family? Is it acceptance in the community? Is it feeling like, I can comfortably be on a podcast in the face of a podcast, and I wouldn't feel this way if I was fatter. So just naming what benefit has this given me, because until some of those things are ready to be faced, and some of them actually need to be grieved, are we really ready to let go of that? And unfortunately, for a lot of folks, the benefits, or the perceived benefits, even the praise people get when they lose weight, the attention, all of those things, the benefits obviously outweigh the cost in some way. If the benefits didn't outweigh the cost for people, they wouldn't do it, or at least not as many people would do it. So just doing a really thorough, thoughtful analysis of like, what are you gaining, or what do you think you're gaining? What are you losing? And what would be different if things changed for you? And, the intuitive eating piece and the going down and eating pizza every single day, like that's a myth that eventually will not happen.
Can you explain to me
why
intuitive
that won't
eating
happen?
and why? And yeah.
So when we are babies, we know when we're hungry. We know when we're full. We let go of the teat when we're done. We cry when we're hungry. And at some point, our innate ability to understand our own biological needs was compromised. For some people, that is at 1 year old, at 2 years old. You're not going to eat. It's not dinner time yet. Eat your entire plate. Why are you not eating the whole plate? Right? So many signals, right? Like, I'm curious for you, what do you think was the first time that you felt that you could not trust your own innate signal for food?
I'm not sure. I think body came first, like a really big awareness of body, because I grew up with athletes. Like, that type of, thing was very important in my family. My mom's a marathon runner. My dad was an athlete. My brother's a professional athlete, so that type of culture is so I was very aware of body. And then I think I learned that food affects body. When I was like 5 years old, my mom got pregnant with my brother. And when she told me that she was pregnant, I cried because I didn't want her to get fat. Like, that was my reaction. So I don't know. I was so young, but like, clearly there was signals, so I don't exactly remember the first time, but I know that there was just a general awareness of body and food and what food does to the body. So very young,
right.
I think.
Right. Do you know if you had like full access to food when you were like very little?
I always have.
Okay.
My parents have always they've never shamed us for what we eat. My mom, in fact, is like, eat, Matilda loves deviled eggs. She'll make Matilda a dozen deviled eggs and be like, please eat them. She's like, that is her way of showing love. It's never been like a shame or like a direct shame around you can't eat this or you can't eat that. I think it was more so what I watched in other people. It was never anything that was put on to me directly.
Right. But it was learned.
I think it was just learned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Through others.
Right.
But I want to be very clear about, my parents have never shamed my siblings or I for anything like that.
Right. Right. And I mean, I think that that's fantastic. And I think that they did not shame you. I think that for me, knowing that we're going to have a child, one of the things is I really have to watch what I say and what my wife says and what people around them say, because so often it's not about what we're telling them to do or not to do. It's about what they see, hear, feel, Right. Kind of back to the intuitive eating piece. We are quite thrown off of our intuition, because even with the body awareness for you, something went a little bit oh, well, but then, okay, then in some way people get fat and I don't want to do that thing that makes people fat. Right. And so it again, pulled away from just, well, what do I need? What does my body need? And what does my body like? Right. What brings it pleasure? We're so removed even away from pleasure that we're not allowed to have it just for pleasure's sake.
Right.
Right. So it's about reconnecting with the self, understanding what we actually want and what we actually need. And the reality is that our bodies are so much smarter than we are. And eventually they fight back. The restriction will eventually cause binging. If you want some Doritos and you eat carrot sticks instead, you're gonna go and eat a bunch of stuff because you're well, that didn't satisfy me. And then the baked apple crisps, the pretzels didn't satisfy me, and this and that's right. And eventually you're eating more than you actually wanted to eat.
Yes.
You're more than beyond full, and you still haven't gotten the satisfaction of the Doritos. Right. Yeah. And so I challenge folks, and I have this conversation so much, because anytime I tell someone that I do this, they're like, I would eat 8 pizzas every day. I'm like, you would not eat 8 pizzas every day. First of all, habituation, you would get completely tired of it, right? You'd be like, I need a salad. My body wants vegetables. That's a conversation that I have so often, is are we actually attuned to what we want and need? And are we willing to try and see what happens? And so many people aren't willing to try because they are scared of even 5 pounds of weight gain.
Right.
One thing that I have to disclose to clients is like, some people are like, oh, like intuitive, like the intuitive eating diet. It's like, no, it's not a diet.
Right.
And it is not for the purpose of weight loss. The fear of weight gain is what keeps people from reconnecting with themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, what if you gained weight and you actually realized you feel better? What if you gained weight and realized that you really, I don't know, for me, I realized I really like lifting weights. I love being strong. I have undoubtedly gained weight. There's no way. I have so much muscle on me at this point.
Right.
I'm like stocky, you know, and but I feel better. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think it's about being willing to have the possibility that maybe I'll feel better. Maybe weight gain isn't so bad. Maybe it's not scary. Maybe I won't change my weight at all, but I'll be happier. Mm-hmm. I will stop the cycle. I will be more calm. I'll have more brain space. I'll have, right, all the cons list will maybe be ticked off a little bit more.
Right.
For me, it was like, I will stop wasting money on everything under the sun, the weight loss plans, the like really expensive, weird, like keto food that costs like 8 times more for no reason, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's so many potential benefits. But I had to really take a look at what was I willing to lose? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I did lose things. I lost compliments.
Yeah.
I lost the ability to participate in diet culture conversations, which is a social reality. It's a social norm. I, in fact, remove myself out of them now completely. And, you know, people know not to talk about that stuff around me. Yeah. But those things are so layered.
So I do want to kind of talk about, I could talk to you all day, but I want to talk about some of the practical things.
Yeah.
To give our audience, we're going into the holidays. I want people to have some practical things. You did give us one thing last time we talked that Matilda and I have been actively trying.
Which is?
It kind of flows into what we were just talking about. You said that when you are hungry, to check in with your intuition and say, like, do I want something hot or cold? Do I want something, you know, crunchy or soft or runny? And so we've been doing that. Like,
how's it going?
I think it's fun. Like before we go to order or before we go to eat, we'll be like, okay, hot or cold. We go through kind of this whole process, and it really does kind of make you take the pause and be like, okay, what do I actually want? So I feel more connected. What do you think? Yeah, it's been nice. So can you explain kind of the reason behind that and some other tips?
Yeah. So that one kind of connects to this like idea of satisfaction, right? So fullness and satisfaction are not the same thing. So we can feel extremely full and incredibly unsatisfied, right? Like you can eat, I mean, a barrel of iceberg lettuce and feel full for a bit, but I don't think you're going to be satisfied. And other times, actually, I'm like eating potato chips and I'm full, but that's not actually what I wanted. I actually wanted some iceberg lettuce, like, right? So satisfaction is such a key part to our relationship with food, and like feeling like good, like you've walked away and feel good that you're not lacking something, right? So much of our kind of disordered behavior comes from a place of scarcity and a place of lacking, that like if we can enrich ourselves with like feeling satisfied, feeling good, feeling full as well, right? If you ate an ice cream cone and you're satisfied but you're not full, you're probably going to want to eat again in an hour, and that's okay, right? But satisfaction is like such a important one element, right, of intuitive eating is making sure that we are not depriving ourselves of satisfaction. Food is not just fuel. Food is culture. Food is joy. Food is taste. Food is, sensuality. Food is sexy sometimes, right? Food is so much part of other elements of our lives that I think to reduce it to like fuel, calories in, calories out, like is so
sad.
It robs it. Yeah, it's sad. It robs our joy and our satisfaction and can be quite miserable if oh well, yes, go to your Italian family's big like meal every year and bring your pre-prepped
Yeah, your
salad?
Tupperware container.
Yeah, your Tupperware container, which I've seen people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it. But practical tips, I would say, outside of that, that's a great one. I actually just ran a workshop around like navigating food and body conversations and creating boundaries around that. I think is if we are trying to examine our own relationships to ourselves, to our bodies, to food, and that chatter is around us all the time, or people are making commentary about us, it's really hard to stay present and on our own journey of healing. And so creating boundaries and saying like, oh, I don't think about food like that. Or I would prefer not to discuss my body. Sometimes it's as easy as just walking away. I have to go to the bathroom, right? If you're not ready to confront that,
right?
Or even pre-prepping, like if your family knows that you're on this journey, but other people are coming, just like telling them like, hey, I'm on this journey. It would be really helpful if like you would also help navigate some of the conversations away. Some people will be really supportive of that if you have that support. Not everybody does. There's so many humor, deflection can be really, really empowering, and also, kind of set the metric for how you want to be treated and how you want to be spoken to.
I really I don't think about food that way. I really like that.
Yeah, I'm shouting out, Evelyn, shout out to you. That was yours. Yeah, because you don't, right? Intuitive eating thinks about food in a different way. All right, and then a few things that are like fairly short and straightforward. Be conscious of who you follow on social media. You can even set settings like on Instagram, like show me less posts like this, show me no posts like this when you see like a weight loss post. But then also bringing good, positive, like practitioners into your life. Watching your own language and how you talk about food. So like noticing, it's so much of this is just like noticing, are you saying things like, oh, like I'm going to be bad and eat some chips, right? Or, oh, that's like good food, right? All food is good food.
Right.
If it's edible, unless you have an allergy, then it's bad, right? Then that's the only way I look at it. I'm like, yeah, if you're going to die, then it's bad. Junk food, I don't use that phrase because it insinuates that it belongs in the trash. So kind of noticing that and saying like, how do I demoralize my language around food? Because if the tough thing is like, if I eat bad food, I'm a bad person. And that is so pervasive. The other piece is like just finding community, because so many people don't talk about this, but it is so relevant. When I really noticed is when I started telling people that like, this is what I do, this is the kind of coaching I do, everybody has had some kind of a story or has had some type of a background or a family member or like, wow, that's so great that you do this. But I'm like, but nobody talks about, until I started talking to people about this, no one talks about this. And so finding community with people, finding people that you do feel comfortable talking to. In the beginning of like in January, end of January 2025, like I'm launching an online community that I'm very, very excited about. People can sign up on my website just like to pre-register. That is going to be specifically for this, where people are sharing, because it's not accessible for everyone. So like where people are maybe sharing free resources or low cost groups or just talking to each other, like, it's going to Slack. So like there's going to be channels for trans people only, right? Again, like create safety and commonality. And I think that for me, my isolation was the real like nail in the coffin for me until I was able to like take an actual axe and like beat through the coffin and break out of there. That's what kept me so scared for so long, was just no one knew. And I didn't want to talk to anyone about it.
Yeah.
There's so many practical tips. There's books of practical tips of things you can do, exercises and, self-assessments and talking about it, finding people that support you, finding people that are cheerleaders of not intentionally trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
All of those things are so invaluable because there's our society, unfortunately, is a naysayer to that.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to fall back into it, that finding the people and the places where you can escape that can really be the difference between healing or falling back into the trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Welcome.
I am so grateful. I feel like every time we talk, I walk away with something new, and you've helped me a lot, and I know you're going to help a lot of our listeners. I have one more question for you.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
What are you working on in therapy?
Which therapy?
Pick one.
Okay, because I have individual therapy and I have couples therapy, and not because we're going through a crisis, but because
Maintenance.
Maintenance, just like individual therapy. I don't know why people don't do that for couples therapy. In individual therapy, actually, my therapist she has like a specialty in eating disorders. That's a requirement for me for any therapist, just in case, because I still have bad days. I'm imperfect. Yeah. She's actually supporting me on this journey and like ensuring that, like, what are the things that are there things that are triggering me? Are there things that are really hard for me that I hear from people? And ensuring that I have a grounded place to go to like talk about that. Luckily so far, not yet. Like very, very specifically right now, we're literally trying to dissect if there's any leftover trauma that I have that I maybe don't remember or like haven't considered that I still need to like dissect from my childhood. So that's my individual therapy.
After talking to you, I went to my therapist and said, I don't think we're talking about this enough, because it comes up in so many different ways. And it opened up a whole conversation about my kind of past and what triggers my eating disorders. A lot of different things, but something that I like very specific that I took away and I was like mind blown by was I grew up around anorexia. I had binge eating disorder, I guess I don't know how I would say that, but, and what I learned is that with anorexia, it is an upper. So it like gives energy, or I guess what she was saying is it's all about kind of regulating your system. So different eating disorders will come in and regulate your systems in different ways. And so some of them kind of are uppers and some of them are downers, and binge eating is like a downer. It brings your system down. And that makes so much sense for me because I also love to smoke weed. I like things that kind of calm. I love yoga. I love meditation, and they all kind of bring me down. And so what I found interesting was she said, like, when I'm feeling that kind of that like triggered, to find other ways that I know work to bring my system to that same place and space. So like the yogas and, that type of thing. I just found that so interesting.
Yeah. What I don't want to happen is for you to feel like, oh, I'm hungry, I don't want to have a binge, so I'm going to go do yoga.
Oh, interesting.
You know, because that does happen to folks. There's this like very strong aversion to like this idea of emotional eating when like sometimes it's okay to eat when you're sad because you're eating comfort food is called comfort food for a reason.
Right.
As long as it's not your only coping mechanism. So I just to have awareness and making sure that hey, it's actually like yoga and a piece of chocolate cake is fine.
How do you know the difference of when it's binging and eating for comfort?
Binging, I believe, has like a technical definition, which is like over some set amount of calories. But I think eating to the point where you are sick or like very physically uncomfortable, or, you know, like you've eaten something, you know, you're full and like continue eating like maybe a lot after that, not just like a few extra bites because it tasted so good.
Right.
I don't want to define that exactly because I do believe that there's like a medical definition of a binge versus a, you know, you're eating because you're sad and you do have some hunger and you're choosing the food that's going to make you more comfortable, that's going to bring you warmth or joy, and maybe eating a little bit more than you usually would, maybe eating past the point of like fullness, but not to the point that you are like ill.
Right.
Right. And even if that happens once in a blue moon, that's okay. No single meal, no single day, and no single week will ever define your life, your wellness or well-being. I don't like the word wellness because it's been stolen, but your well-being, no single iota of time will define that. And so if it does happen once or twice, the more important thing, at least in my eyes, is to make sure that the aftermath of that is not restriction, self-punishment, guilt, because that is actually what's going to cause a much more long-term cycle than just saying, you know, last night was really shitty and I wanted a really big piece of cake and I'm just going to go to regularly scheduled programming today.
Yeah. Thank you for that insight. As someone who is still stumbling through this, I really find a lot of value in, you know, these little pieces of information and outside kind of perspectives. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell everybody where to find you, where to find the community that you're starting?
Yeah. At Liza K Coaching, Lizak, Liza like Manelli Coaching. Same on, I think, Substack. And then my website is just my name, lizakatsman.com, Katsman. And that's where I have a blog, I have a community, the sign up is there, FAQs. So actually I list out like, what is intuitive eating? What are some of these things? What is body neutrality versus like there's actually a page of FAQs if you're curious about some more of this stuff. On my website, you can sign up for a free first session, like full hour session. If this is something that you have, you know, curiosity about, you want to talk to someone, no strings attached at all. I want to, you know, be of service where I can be. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right. We play a game.
Okay.
It's called You Haul or You Ghost.
Okay. Great.
They're perfect in every way except maybe this one little quirk.
Okay. I should preface that I'm married.
Yes. Well, in this, you know, scenario, you're not. Right. You're back in the scene.
Right. Back. Okay.
Back in the scene.
Woo.
They're perfect in every way, but they have flames on the side of their car.
It depends on why they have the flames.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like if people out here like have had struggles and like that was the only car available to them, it was a hand-me-down. I mean, what are they going to do? Right. True. So like, I'd rather them like, you know, be like, you know what, I have to do what I have to do. I have to get to my job. And this is the car I have to drive in. Now, if they elected to get it themselves, again, I'd have to ask them why.
Yeah. Maybe it has like sentimental meaning.
Correct. You know, like their, I don't know, grandfather that passed away had flames on his car. And like, it's the only way that she remembers him. Okay, that's kind of cute. So, it would still be hard, like at the valet. Right. But it's like every time you turn in the keys, you're like, this is the memory of my grandpa. Wow. Right? And then make everyone have like a bleeding heart for you too. Wow. Okay, I'd be at the valet like, her fucking grandpa had flames. Shut up about it. Yeah. But yeah, so like honestly, this is you're gonna not have a good time with me because for everything I'm gonna have it depends. You're gonna have a really hard time.
That sounded like a U-Haul.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, that's fine. What about every time they go to the bathroom, even when it's just like y'all at home, they have to run the sink because they're like shy?
You're going to hate me. It depends, right?
What?
Like if they have trauma. Well, if they have trauma,
fair.
right? So like some people were like made to be very, very ashamed of going to the restroom. And so like, if that's something that they have to work on in therapy, like who am I to shame them? I mean, I'd be like, hey, can you like run it on the really light just because like I don't want to waste water? Or I would install speakers into every bathroom and be like, pop these on.
Okay, we're U-Hauling.
Yeah.
Okay, this one, it can't be a depends.
Okay. I challenge you.
They use their finger to get the rest of the sauce off the plate to eat it.
Where?
It's your first date.
It's your first date.
Okay.
Oh, it's your first date.
And we're at a restaurant.
And you're at a restaurant. It's in public.
Right. I mean, as long as their fingers are clean. Honestly, if you find that much satisfaction in what you're eating, more power to you.
This one feels like a table manner thing to me.
Oh, interesting. I'm like, are we comfortable? Like, are they just like, oh my God, this is so good. And like even make it kind of sexy. Let's go.
It's a turn on.
Yeah. Like you find that much pleasure and have that much confidence where you can do that and probably even lick your finger a little sexy.
U-Haul.
Let's go.
Okay. What about they have two ferrets that run loose in the house?
Oh my God, my old best friend used to have a ferret that ran loose in the house. Yeah, and like he used to steal everything. I don't know if you know that ferrets steal things. Do you know this?
No.
Ferrets are crooks. So they steal things and they hide them. So like underwear, little trinkets, like her jewelry went missing. They're really cute. I can handle it. Like as long as, well, okay. So like if they are completely like not behaved, they like come in and like maybe scratch me at night, like things like that, then probably.
Can you train a ferret?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so untrained.
They're trainable. They're actually they're only illegal in California for a really stupid rule that was set in the 1950s.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't even a problem in California.
No, that's why I was like, that's why you don't see ferrets in California. Yeah, because
this kind of would. I think maybe like I wouldn't be able to sleep. No, it's not like an ick. It just, I don't think I'd be able to sleep well because I'd be like, ooh, like
but see, this is where I'm weird. Like I would love to like, I like think rats are adorable. Yeah. I like snakes. Like it's not icky to me. I used to work at a vet office. So
I'm like such an animal lover, but it is interesting. Like when you cross over into the rodent reptile kind of world, I all of a sudden get a little like, ooh.
I think the only thing that would bother now, if you told me that this person had a possum running wild in the house, that's a goodbye.
Do you want to hear something crazy? One time,
just amok.
One time, Matilda and I were in Europe, and our dog sitter called us. Our dog had brought a possum inside and was trying to like play with it, and they were freaking the fuck out.
But like, was it like hurting it and like ripping its little legs off?
No. I don't think he meant to. He had it in his mouth, so it wasn't great. But I don't think he was trying to hurt with it. I genuinely think he was trying to play with it. But they called us like freaking the fuck out, and they had to eradicate the possum. Oh, yeah, it wasn't a great situation.
Oh,
if I would have been there, I would have freaked out.
Oh, yeah. That's see, possums are like I'm good with like most animals, but like I don't know something about possums. So if you had a pet possum, again, I think that's illegal, but that would be a no. But a ferret, I can handle.
Okay, that's your line. That is your you ghost. We found it. It's a possum.
Yeah. Thank you. A free possum, a free running possum.
Thank y'all for listening to today's episode. As always, help us spread the gay agenda by writing an Apple review, rating us on Spotify, and sharing with everyone you've ever met. And if you haven't yet, join our subscription community, Made It In, for exclusive Made It Out media shows, content, and chat rooms at madeitout.supercast.com. Made It Out is produced by Matilda Jordan and worked on solely by lesbians.
Holiday season. Deck the halls with lesbians, but not with my ex. Amen.